So I'm guessing I'm like most carp anglers, not a lot of time, got a busy family life, got a little 3-year-old boy that keeps me on my toes. Love other things outside of fishing, you know, going out with good friends, going on some really, really nice holidays. But when I'm planning my weeks and months in ahead, you know, I normally sort of go one session a month on Stoneacres. You know that you've got to give it that 110%. And when you get down here, you're sort of, yeah, you get that nervous energy, but actually it's exciting, and you know you've got to really work hard for a bite on here. But that's the challenge. I guess it's a bit like my sales sort of role. You know, when you get a sale over the line, there's nothing better than signing that deal, writing that business. So I guess carp fishing to me is a little bit like that. Sometimes you're chasing them, you're hunting them, you get that take in the morning, and yeah, your legs go to jelly. I've been coming down to this Oxfordshire area for probably 10 years now. Previous to that, from Leicester, big match fishing scene around there. I was in all the local sort of working men club type sort of matches. My friend Dan took me down to Linear for a couple of trips, and you know, you get into that sort of that carp buzz, but it is super, super busy on Linear. And I had a walk around Christchurch, and I remember seeing a few sort of carp clouding up the margins, and I was like, wow, this is cool. Just turned day ticket, so it wasn't too busy, and that just started my passion down here. Super, super cool lads. Even though it was a day ticket, it felt like a syndicate vibe. Same lads, most weekends used to come down. You know, myself, I was down once a month, but it was, guess what, it's the same guys. You get in touch with them, they become your carp friends, inverted commas, and you build them relationships.
I first met Tim over 10 years ago. He was working in the car parts department, I think, because he's a friend of my dad's. My car was knackered, and he said, oh, I'll speak to Tim, he'll help you out. Tim helped me out, bless him, and for helping me out, he said, just take me fishing in Oxford, where I was doing a lot of fishing at the time. So I went to Oxford, went to St John's, and Tim caught the big common. And I think from then on, Tim did a lot of match fishing at the time. And knowing Tim, you can see why. It suits the sort of time frame he gets to go fishing. But seeing him catch that carp, it almost changed his whole outlook on fishing. And from then on, Tim just went on and just he's caught loads more bigger carp than me. You know, he's on Christchurch, on all over the place, and then eventually on Stoneacres. And for someone that doesn't get, I mean, everyone says I don't get any time. Tim is the definition of not getting time. You know, he books his trips in at the start of the year. He knows when he's going fishing, like once a month. I mean, fair play to him. To have been on Stoneacres, to have caught what he's caught, with the life that he has, it's amazing. And not just that, he is probably one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet in fishing. If everybody was like Tim in carp fishing, it would be the best. I mean, it is a great place, but it would be the best place. Tim's the man.
So my sort of style of angling was rock up on a Friday night, Christchurch. Yeah, it was busy, you know, it was always the corners that were free, peg 11 and 12 in the corners that were there. But my style of angling at that point was very sort of chod fishing, literally probably half a kilo of boilies, a catapult, and I think sometimes on those busy day tickets, when those main sort of swims are gone, everyone's been laying up, spodding the life out of the place. Actually, those pressured fish love those corners. And for me to turn up, barrow down, past Stoneacres, always a cheeky little look over your shoulder at that place, and thinking, yeah, that might be a bit too much for me. You'd get onto church, yeah, guess what, peg 11 and 12 in the corner were free. But yeah, you know what? The fish that I did have, I didn't have multiple numbers, but the ones I did have were them special ones, the ones that hadn't been caught for 12 months. The big 40-pounders, like your ironing boards and your toe jams and your perch commons and stuff. And they're all just literally 3 little chucks, handful of bait around them, sit back quietly, slack lines. And in the morning, you know, you might get 1 and even 2 sometimes on some sessions. And yeah, there were always them special ones. As that got busier and busier, you know, obviously there was more publicity about the place. You know, you couldn't help it because the fish were just so incredible. It just got to the point where actually sometimes I'd turn up and there wasn't a swim. I spoke to Nick about You know, there's a couple of lads that were moving over from Christchurch to Stoneacres. Was it a little bit too much for me? Yeah, it probably was, but I just saw that, you know, 35 members at that point, really quiet, some really cool old school guys on there that you could literally have a brew with for hours, chatting about old carp stories. I thought, you know what, I'm going to give it a go. Ordered the boat and all the bits and bobs that you needed and spent a fortune like you do. Probably the wife wasn't too happy about that, but hey, I'm here and sort of, you know, 6 seasons in now, totally hooked to the place and trying to winkle out them real special ones. That spot is lovely, mate. I've definitely done a job on that. 6 o'clock, probably got an hour and a half of light left. And let's see what we can do, in a short amount of time.
Timmy Rowland, what can you say about Tim? Just an absolute legend, really top lad, great to fish around. I think the thing that strikes me most about Tim is his positivity and his attitude. Given that he's a family guy, he's got a busy job, doesn't get a lot of time. He's also got a lot of other interests and hobbies and stuff as well. Like I talk to Tim loads about fishing, but I also talk to him loads about other stuff as well, which is really nice. For him to set his stall out, to fish somewhere like Stoneacres, as hard as it is, with as much pressure as it gets, you know, I think is admirable really to stay so positive and just to fish that one weekend a month that he does at best. Yeah, you know, I've seen Timmy roll up straight from work, shirt, trousers, shoes, looking sharp as he does, put his shelter up, zip the door down, get his laptop out, start doing Zoom calls before he's even started fishing. Takes a lot, I think, to have that kind of attitude, to be able to do that and fish a serious water at the same time. And also to cherry pick a few good uns generally over the course of a year, over the few trips he does. You know, really meticulous angler. I think because of the nature of how little time he gets, just fishes for a bite at a time, incredibly precise, really careful traps, does everything he can to get himself on the fish as well because he hasn't got any time to wait, you know. And I think, yeah, huge inspiration to watch him operate and to see him fish, and yeah, just mega to know that you can set your stall out on a lake like that with only a few weekends a year to play with and still catch them.
Out to the spot, this wind as well, you've got like 27 mile an hour wind out there. And in those inflatables, honestly, you literally get blown around like no other. You're like a kite on the wind. And with that, you just got to get your nose in the wind. Once you get your nose in the wind, and just literally like tick along number one, find your spot, block it, and obviously with the wind being sideways on today, you've got to make sure that the wind blows you away from your block, because before you know it, you can be in some serious trouble where block out, rig, and before you know it, you can blow into it and it can be a carnage out there. So yeah, always make sure the wind's going to blow you away from it. So the spot I found out there is probably about the size of that boat, gravel, silt on one edge as well, but like a firm drop, so I can definitely get 2 rods on there. With this wind, this side wind, it's probably, you know, it's probably not going to be the best line lay in the world. It's probably going to have a slight bow in it, but we're fishing braid. You know, you get the takes on here are savage, so it won't take long to straighten that out. But yeah, quietly confident. Full moon's around the corner. Never know. Oh, San Miguel. So I remember that first session on Stoneacres, me, Rob Allen, went into Big Point, big swim, loads of water, fairly quiet, you know, like 5 or 6 guys on in the spring. And we were literally, I remember boating out, crystal clear, you could see literally 12 foot down and just a jungle of weed, bits of silt, bits of gravel, and it just blew your mind. You just like, well, where do I place a rig here, you know? And yeah, I can remember that first session, getting some rods out, sitting back and thinking, this is definitely this is just too big. The challenge is just massive for me. You know, with my sort of 15 nights a year on a place like this, 1 session a month. Every month that you come down, it's a different scenario. You know, it might be zigs, then it might be on the deck, then it's weedy, then the viz goes, then it's, you know, before you know it's the autumn, you know, naturals, blah, blah, blah. And it's just, yeah, it was frying my head a little bit in that first session. Obviously didn't catch anything, you know, saw a couple roll actually. I was out in the boat. I remember me and Rob, he was in Ireland, I was out in Big, both out in the boat at the same time, and literally one showed in between us, and I was like, oh my God, big chocolate mirror. Unbelievable. I was just, yeah, I was buzzing. But yeah, the night, you know, that weekend just sort of whittled away. We had a great time, me and Rob, barbecues, beers, and just sort of enjoyed, you know, first session on there. And then I remember coming down, I think I did one more session, then it was the third session where I was sort of like, the middle of the pond was getting really busy, then it was the middle of the spring, all the common swims were sort of taken up with your normal guys, knowing what they're doing, and there was a quiet corner, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to sit down there for a bit. And I saw one show, and another one show, and I thought, hello. Now at this point I've been told, oh, stay out of the boat, stay out of the boat, you know, they don't like the boat in here, and so I was just back to my Christchurch days, just firing choddies at them, handful of bait. 2 days sort of went by, I was on my last 24 hours, and I thought, you know what, I've got to go out and see what they're doing. Hand-oared out there, and there was just this silt hole, and you could just, it was still black, you know, you couldn't actually see the bottom, it was just like a black cloud. Chucked a block over the side, came back, got a rig, went back out to it. By that point all the silt had dropped, and there was all the smashed up snail shells, and I was just like, oh my God, you know. Dropped a rig in the front of the spot, handful of bait out the back, came back, and I was with a friend of mine actually, he doesn't actually fish on there, but he just came down as a bit of a social, and he's from my neck of the woods, and we were watching these chocolate mirrors just rolling most mornings, and it was just unbelievable. It was, oh, there's one, there's one. Must have been about, I must have dropped that rig about dinner time, no, lunchtime it was, yeah, 12, 1 o'clock, and then 5:30 it just peeled off. Played it in gently, honestly, the adrenaline was just next level, like I can remember it now still, like the knees were literally shaking, and I think my mate's got a cool picture of me literally landing it and turning around to the camera and just giving it, they're like, oh my God, I've caught my first Stoneacres carp. Looked down in the net, and yeah, it was this cool, fully scaled, like mid-20s, and you know, it was just me, my mate Chris, we're in the corner, no one else saw, literally had this whole end of this lake to myself. All the other lads were up in the common sort of spring swims, and yeah, shared a good moment with him, and had a barbecue that night, same again, beers, and yeah, I can still remember it now. But what that session taught me was, you've got to find those feeding spots. You know, I was firing choddies at them for 48 hours for nothing, but you know, a few hours in that right spot, a natural feeding area where they're farming it basically. I wish I could have had more sessions after that, because I think that spot probably would have done a couple more bites, but you know, that's my angling, you know. That Sunday drive on the way home, straight back in through the front door, and you're in family zone then, and yeah, the fishing gets put to bed for another month. That wind just like settled just as I was out there. It was perfect. Just that lull in the wind, and you can just sort of like hand oar, drop it down, feel the drop. That was awesome. So after that fully, it sort of taught me a real big lesson that this was the way I was going to fish Stoneacres. For the time I had, it was all about finding them spots, natural feeding areas, placing a trap, small handful of bait, because I didn't have that time to put buckets and buckets in and repeat the process in the same swim week after week. You know, I couldn't do that style, even though it was successful for others, but I just couldn't do that. So my next sort of session then was, to be fair, I was going to have a bit of time with Scotty Lloyd. You know, he was going to show me some sort of just get familiar with the boat and get good at it. You know, I'd seen Scott Lloyd, he was decent in the boat, and he spent some time with me in Big Point, and we got some rods out near a weed bed. And I remember the next morning, I think Scott had gone back over to church for a night and left me to it, and the rod melted off in the morning. It was one of them takes. I remember I was with Scott Jarvis, who was next to me, and we were there, morning brew, 7 o'clock, typical Stoneacres morning, like bright sunshine, and literally this tape from hell just absolutely melted off. No pre-bleeps, it just went from 0 to 100 miles an hour, literally rod tip off, just the butt grip, just holding it on, it was just going, and I remember Scott Jarvis looking and goes, that's a carp, lifted into it straight away, weeded me up, and then I was like, I've got to learn to fish in a boat, never done it before. And the thing with Stoneacres, being a big sort of rectangle in effect, everybody gets out in the morning, and it was like an amphitheatre. You know, you could see other guys looking out, reeling down to this fish. Luckily it was flat calm, glassy, and I just saw this awesome mirror just come out, hand lined it out the weed, went in the net first time, couldn't have gone any better really. It could have taken me around the pond, but it didn't, thank God. Got it back, and I was looking down, I was like, that's the Millwall fish, you know, rare as hen's teeth. And oh yeah, unbelievable. I remember phoning up Scotty Lloyd, and he came over, did some cool shots, and yeah, that sort of bolted on, you know, it was all about finding them sort of feeding zones for me. Off the back of that, I remember we had Rob Allen had caught the Tatton Common, and obviously he was a member on here as well, and it was sort of like, right, Rob, we've got to get a trip in, celebrate that, you know, catching that fish is no mean feat. So we organised a trip. I was in Ireland. I don't think he was fishing actually. It was just me that was fishing, and Scotty Phillips came down. We were having a barbecue, beers. I was fishing Island Point out on one of the bars, and it was sort of late afternoon, I think it was. Yeah, early evening. First one, literally, take from hell again, melted off. And that's the thing on this place, you know, the takes are absolutely savage when they go. They've got a lot of space to run into. You know, the weed wasn't too bad either, so lots of space for them to bolt off. Landed that, and it was this awesome linear, like sort of, must have been like mid-30s, 34s, 35s, and I was just thinking, oh my God, that's why we pay the money. You know, looking down in the net, that's why we pay the money for Stoneacres. Did some cool picks, put that one back, and then half an hour, 40 minutes later, the other one ripped off on the spot. I'm like, what is going on? So we had a cool little mirror, a bit more sort of paler and scattered scales down the flank. Did some pictures, that was literally just going dark, so yeah, we did the best we could and did the group shot with a couple of cans of beer, and sat back and chilled. I remember I was thinking, well, I've got to get those rods back out, and it was pitch black by that point, and I remember oaring out, flat calm, black as everything, and they were rolling around me. You know, it was just like the Loch Ness Monster. You could hear them go, and I was like, oh my God, this is such a buzz. I remember dropping, well, thinking I was near my spot. I was nowhere near it, looking back at it, but it didn't rip off. But just the buzz of just doing that out there in the pond in the dark and hearing them rolling around, you're thinking they're having a feed up. But yeah, it didn't rip off with a hat trick, but hey, a brace on stone is there's a lot of guys that have done a lot of time, and you know, to catch a brace is very, very difficult on here. Ready for action. Let's do this. It's like a two-tone, you've got sort of dark stormy, still pretty crazy out there. Whoa. Really like quietly confident, you know, that that tree's seen a bit of bait over the last sort of few days, and it's definitely been cleaned out. And then just, yeah, yesterday just dropping that rig sweet and kicks out lovely onto the gravel, and you're like, they turn up, they're in trouble. And yeah, that cheeky one toner this morning was all I needed. Nice if one of these long rods busts off. We shall see. So you can't believe this lake, it's so difficult catching one on the first morning. You just sort of got a couple of nights ahead of me as well. Interesting to see what happens. Lake's been fishing really tough. It's done probably 2 bites in the last 4 weeks. So yeah, to catch one on the first morning is a big buzz. Cool little common as well, look at that. Love that patch on it. Small head. And that mouth as well. Epic. Yes. Epic, mate. Mega lake, innit? All that hard work. All them late nights doing night laps. Paying off. I'm not all about the numbers. You know, you fish places like this not for numbers, it's those real special ones. So when you look back in years to come, you look at those albums and, you know, these fish are like probably 40 years old. They are old carp, and, you know, they're I guess a little bit of a ticking time bomb really, and you want to catch them before they disappear, bless them. And so yeah, to get those 4 straight away in that first season, unbelievable. After that, it's quite a tough, you know, it got a little bit busier. A few more members were included that year, but I did get 2 out of Cass Bay, a brace again. Quite an iconic swim, being Cass Bay in Stoneacres, and fresh northeasterly like everyone he loves. And yeah, it happened for me, and yeah, it was just before spawning. So I think, you know, there was a bit of a hit after that. You know, Mark came out at that point at, you know, at £50 for you know, like one of the first times, and looking big, and it was. Then it gave you a bit of an extra sort of kick it. You're thinking, is it Oxfordshire 50 in here after that came out? And I've never fished a lake with a proper UK 50 in it. So that was also another little buzz for sure. Rolling into that third season, I'd fished the spring quite hard. You know, they were all coming off the zigs. I wouldn't say I'm an amazing zig angler, but I was always fishing the deck, and I was in Ireland fishing up against the island there, and I fished hard, and it was sort of beating me a little bit, and then out of the blue, like they do, you just get an absolute screamer, playing it in, and there's a couple of leathers in here, and one of them is sort of mid-30, and it's a proper leather, you know, got them sort of small head, cool fins, and slipping that into the net, looking down and seeing, yeah, big leather, you know. I guess I've never caught a leather like that before where I fish back home and even on Christchurch. So to get that one sort of chalked off and in the album was really cool. You know, I guess it's not your sort of traditional sort of horseshoe style, big scaly, it's, yeah, cool leather, crusty sort of skin, nice fins, pointy head, over the moon with it. After that, it got tough again, but I knew my life was about to change in a good way. My wife was pregnant. I probably had maybe a couple more sessions before Remy was going to be born in August. And I remember going back now, I was talking to the wife. I'd had that session where I had blanks, but there was definitely a few about. And I said to the wife, look, can I have one more session before the little man turns up? She goes, yeah. So I came down, obviously I had a freezer full of bait that I knew that I wasn't going to be using for months and months after this session. And I was in Crows, and I baited it quite heavy for me. Normally me was just a handful here and there, and I remember tipping 7 kilos of krill over the side, just getting rid of everything I had in the cupboards and freezers at home. Sat back on that Friday thinking, well, you know, it's a bait and wait, it's not my sort of style, but I know it's going to be on the last session for a while. And the Sunday morning, one ripped off the tree, playing it, and a hook pull. And the first one I'd lost in the first, you know, couple of seasons, and I was gutted. You know, that last session I knew really for that year, you know, after that it was going to be a write-off. I was probably going to be back like November, December, just for a token visit. Reeled in like you do, rod up against the side, packing down, bivvy, loading the car up, and out of nowhere, the long spot I had going, that I tipped all that krill on, just bolted off. Out in the boat, landed it, real sort of cool, scaly, like mid to sort of low 20. Yeah, I was blown away, you know. It's one of them ones where you don't have to weigh it, you know, you're just looking at it and you're thinking, wow, that is why you pay the money. Slipped him back, obviously didn't think, you know, nothing else was going to happen, literally packing down the boat, and out of nowhere, the other rod on the spot just bolted off. Played that one in, netted that, looked down. Quite a sort of a plain fish, but had these really unique sort of fins on it, like really withered down, sort of spiking dorsals on it. Cool carp. And you know what, I thought that's just sealed my season. I knew that, like I say, my life was going to change big time. You know, I'd gone from that sort of big holidays, lots of time to myself, to going to turn into going to be a dad for the first time, which is going to be super exciting. So I guess with my style of angling, that routine, turning up on a Friday night, 5:30, 6 o'clock after work, that first night's always a throwaway. You know, you're going to get some rods out and say, you know, you're an educated guess where they may be. You know, you can't lap and lap and lap. You know, to get 4 rods out in a boat, dying light, it's really you know, you're talking 2-3 hours potentially sometimes. You know, if there's a big wind on, etc. So you're really fishing for Sunday's bite time. You know, you're probably doing a move on a Saturday and then you're fishing for Sunday's bite time. Obviously COVID hit that sort of third season for me. Obviously I had the little dude, so it was quite cool to spend that time at home with him. Obviously when the lakes reopened, like everywhere, super busy, and this place was no different. Couldn't really get on them. That year, you know, it gave me a bit of a kick in really. I nicked one, a fish called the Nokia. 33.10, I think I had it at 33.12 though, to be fair. But yeah, it always comes out, it's a male, always comes out in that sort of 33.10, 33.12 in weight. Cool carp though, you know, sort of probably a different strain, mate. I don't know, maybe a Sutton style. But really pleased with that because I thought I was going to be on for a bit of a blank. Then with work, sort of changed a little bit. You know, we had a change with work, a different culture, a bit of a buyout, and with that new style of work, we could actually buy annual leave. Obviously it costs you money, but you could actually invest and think, well, you know what, I've got a family now, those 20-25 days annual leave that I use for holidays, etc. are super important, but I don't want it to eat into my fishing time. You know, you've got to be fair when you've got a wife and kids, etc. So I could buy the time. So I bought some annual leave, 5 days annual leave. So what that gave me was those 1 sessions a month that I had planned in the diary. I could actually book the Friday off, and then I could turn down on a Thursday night. That probably gave me a massive advantage, I think, really, because I beat the Friday night lads because I was turning up on the Thursday. Then instead of having just 1 bite time on that Sunday morning, I actually had a Saturday and a Sunday, so I could probably find them, you know, Friday morning, either Thursday night, move on through them. Get your trap set, then you're fishing, like say, for Saturday and maybe potentially a Sunday bite. And yeah, last year was my best season. You know, I had 6 carp, 16 nights from April to October. I didn't blank every session. You know, 1 a month that I came down, caught every single trip. No tench. It was sort of, yeah, the perfect trip for me. So buying that annual leave definitely gave me a huge advantage. Turning up, like I say, on those Thursday nights and finding them made a massive difference. Springtime, booked a bit of annual leave like you do, and I was in Big Point. Twitchy take this time, not a screamer. Literally, rod just pulled up tight, and it even just took the rod off the alarm and then back down. So I literally just got a few beeps, weeded up straight away, wound down to that, plodding under the rod tip, came up, big chocolate mirror, slid the net under that one, and I looked down and I was like, that's mini choco. Now it's always hovering around that sort of 39 mark. Being spring, could it do 40? Never caught a 40 pounder out of Stoneacres. You know, I was very lucky on church. Had quite a few of those 40s, but not one out of Stoneacres. And yeah, getting on the scales and seeing it go around to 40 pounds too. I know it's just a number, but yeah, it was an epic carp. That, you know, just seeing that on the net, real special one for me. And probably one of them carp that you probably don't give it credit when you see it in the photos, but when you see it on the bank, and it is an epic carp. And if you look at the original Choco, it is literally a carbon copy. It really is, same shape, even some scales in some sorts of areas. Cool carp. I remember bracing that with the baby bus the next morning, same spot as well. You know, two off that spot, it was rocking, awesome. You know, and even the following morning, I felt like there was a chance of a third, but yeah, never happened for me. Caught another couple of the characters in here, bearded lady. That was a real nice surprise. You know, I'd seen pictures of that, more of a pot-bellied halfling, cool carp, mid-30s. Repeated on a couple, but I guess, you know, when you're talking 45, 50 carp in here, you're going to have that scenario. But yeah, got some just a couple of snaps and slip them back. Rolling into this season, it's been a season of two halves for me. Spring, you know, I love fishing in here in the spring. It's obviously quite a ziggy sort of water, but you can catch them on the deck. And obviously this spring had been sort of hot and cold, and I sort of know my sessions months in advance. You know, I've got a calendar in my phone that I know, and unfortunately I can't plan it around, you know, those weather fronts like some of the other guys could. So yeah, my sessions in the spring were always those -2 weekends, when the weekend before, when it was doing a few bites, it was, you know, 8s and 10s in April, and the lads were catching them. So yeah, the spring beat me up, really did. Lads were catching a lot of fish, and I was, you know, just blanking every session. May, there's always that window where, you know, this place sort of spills its guts, and I remember I was sunning myself in Greece with a family, having a great time, and, you know, my mates on the lake, oh yeah, I've had one, I've had two, I've had three, you know, and I think that week it did like 20 odd bites, and there's me sort of scrolling at home, scrolling in Greece with a pina colada in my hand, thinking, oh, I've missed that opportunity. Spawning happens, you know, I normally sort of have a weekend early June, you know, just before spawning, and they spawned early on here. You know, we had that sort of fairly sort of warm spring, or gentle warm, and it was just building, and yeah, this session I did have planned, I had to cancel, you know, they were spawning, so that put it to bed for 3 or 4 weeks. So I came back then in the July. It's a total different pond then, you know, weeds up, viz is gone, it gets tough, there's no doubt about that. You know, the fish are all on the naturals in the weed beds, and I'd come down fishing in calves actually. Seen a couple of shows the following morning in a swim round to the corner in humps. Went there, seen them fizzing, book it in like you do. Rods out that morning or late afternoon, and that next morning, a proper screamer, literally, same again, one of them sort of bites where no pre-beeps, it's just straight into a one tone, and gone through the weed bed, out the other side. Eased that through, and yeah, when that went into the net, looking down, I could see it was one of those sort of Sutton-y type, you know, mid-30s, really cool carp, a couple of 5 or 6 scales on the flank, and I was thinking, yeah, I'm off the mark, I'm happy, you know, like I say, every season, I'm just happy to catch one, you know, with my sort of, you know, 15, 20 nights a year. So that sort of gave me some sort of confidence of fishing those sort of spots again. After that, it was another month, obviously, with me, August, and it was just before I was going to go on holiday. Came round, I had a meeting actually in Oxford, so it was quite useful for me. You know, I could do a lap before I was coming down here in the evening. I saw one show, so I thought, I know where I need to be. That's enough for me. The lake was fairly quiet. You know, the summer is quite good for those sorts of quieter times. You can properly angle. You know, you can get on fish, you can move. Which is obviously what we all love to do. Setting up that evening, I remember just quickly sort of hand boating out there, quiet as you like. I'd found actually, looking down through the scope, they'd obviously done a job on a sort of a silty area, or the weed was sort of pushed back, and I thought, well, that's got to be a bite there. If they turn up then the following morning, rig down, handful of bait, back quietly. I'd also seen a show to the right, on a sort of next to a weed bed, so I'd had sort of that earmarked. Same again, found a silty area out there, a few smashed up snail shells. So I thought, well, you know what, that's probably a shout as well. And had a long spot that, to be fair, a friend of mine put me on, because it was proper weedy out there, loads of milfoil, thick, you know, spots that I knew were sort of weeded over. And to be fair, my mate Mark put me on a spot. So I had sort of 3 that I was confident with. The 4th one was sort of the one down the edge. And it was getting on a bit in the evening. I was a bit knackered, work as you do. I thought, you know what, I'm gonna have an early night, maybe do a lap in the night or first thing in the morning. Got my head down like, I don't know, 10 to 9, early doors. A few bleeps on the short rod. Looked up, bobbing up to the top, out the clip. Waders on slowly, thinking, oh, it's a tench. Reeled down to it. Didn't take any line, but it wasn't knocking like a tench, just reel. Saw a bit of a linear as it got closer, scale missing. I was thinking, oh, could be Ad's Lin, because that's not been out for a while and that's got a scale missing on one side. Slipped the net under it, looking down, I thought, oh, it's a double row linear. I'm thinking, there's only sort of one fish in here that's that. Looked at the mouth, it's got quite a unique mouth, quite beaky, bottom lip, and I was like, it's the number 9 bus. Like a fish that you just never think you're going to catch. It's, you know, pretty elusive. There's a lot of good anglers that have angled for it and walked away from the lake because they put the time in and it doesn't happen for them. Never seen it on the bank myself, and just looking down at that, I was like, oh my God, that is the bus. I remember phoning up Robbie, literally like shaking, and I remember him telling me after, he says, didn't even sound like you on the phone. Super just excited, but also like weirdly nervous and felt sick in a weird way. Light was going, you know, by that point, by the time the lads had come round, you know, there's a wicked bunch of lads on here, you know, and when one of you catches one of them special ones, literally everyone's round, you know, helping. One's on water, one's on goalkeeping duties, you know, you got guys on cameras, you got another guy with your GoPros and your cameras and your film stuff, and yeah, it was epic, you know, cool times. We had to be quick, unfortunately, because like I say, the light was going and didn't really want those sort of flash type pictures, so yeah, we did our best in low light. And slipped her back.
See me boy, give us a smile, mate. Oi, oi!
Look at that, man. Stoneacres, isn't it?
Tilt her up on the back. Belly down.
Belly down like that.
Yeah, that's it. Just so she's just there.
Look at her! You bastard. Never thought I'd hold that. Never thought. Never thought.
I want to let it go. Jesus.
Yes, Tim. No! Nice one. Oh, mate. Look at that, incredible. That next morning, the right-hand rod that I'd seen a show over and got one in the sort of zone, that pulled up tight. And I was like, oh my days, you know, literally in the space of 12 hours, I've got 2 bites. That would weeded me up straight away, so that was out in the boat, wound down to that. Hand-oared that one out as I was getting the leader, coming up, and then this ridiculous linear just comes up out of the depths. And before it bolted off, scooped it, looked down, straight away I knew that it was that up front lin. It's got like a sort of a small sort of like fully up front, and then just literally a perfect linear. Normally just sort of like mid-30s, got back to the bank on the same. This time it was sort of beautiful morning sunshine, same again, the lads all came round, got some cool shots of that, a bit of video as well, and slipped that back. At that point there, you know, when you've had a brace, I literally had 2 nights. I had to be back on the Saturday actually, because I'd booked a couple of days off. The the Thursday and the Friday, and had to be back Saturday morning for the wife was away on holiday with the little one, so knew I had to be back early Saturday morning. And I'm sitting there quiet Saturday morning, and I saw one roll on the short spot, fizzing up, thinking, hey up, could be in for a hat trick here. Sitting right up by my rod, thinking, it's going to go. And then literally out of nowhere, the long one that my mate Mark put me on, just tipped down, boom, you know, clutch just ticking away. I'm like, that's a carp. Into it straight away, out in the boat, because you're fishing long, a lot of weed. That swim got a lot of milfoil, you can't really sort of drag them through that. Playing that fish, and then I just saw this common come up, and it was long. You know, the bus is long, and that's not far from it. Playing it gave me a good boat battle, towing me up the upwind, came up, nearly netted it, then it bolted off again, and obviously, you know, made it probably angry knowing me, and yeah, it gave me a good sort of 10-15 minute boat battle, but yeah, in the net that went, and looking down, not seen that one before to be fair, real cool, overslung mouth, big fins, chocolate, yeah, long. That went round to 37s, and I was just like, you know, I couldn't believe it, you know, a hat trick, my first one on the complex, 48 hours, 3 bites, 3, you know, ridiculous carp, one of the real A team as well with the bus, and just, yeah, blown away, you know, and that's what you pay the money for on this sort of the complex. The lads are, you know, unbelievable, real good buzz. You know, I had messages for days off the guys going, what a weekend, you know, and they weren't catching, but they were still like super pleased for me, which is, I know you don't get that on all syndicates, and a place like this when you've got all them special carp, I think you get that sort of vibe on this sort of place. There's no sort of, you know, backstabbing, it's sort of well done, you know. If the bus comes out, there's still Kevs, there's still no name, you know, these guys that are after those sort of top table fish, it's not like everyone packs up and goes home, they carry on, and I think that's what makes this sort of place so special.